VCCA Spotlight. I'm your host, Jim Karras. Today we are shining the light on the personalized Chevrolet chapter. The chapter's director, Ron Marciano, will join us to share some information about the non-geographic chapter. Ron lives in Basking Ridge, New Jersey with his wife, Jean. Ron and Jean have been members of the Vintage Chevrolet Club of America for over 30 years. Ron is a charter member of the recently formed Personalized Chevrolet chapter, known by its members as the PCC. Ron has served as the chapter's director for the past few years. In addition to Ron's membership in the PCC, Ron and Jean are longtime members of the VCCA's local region near their home, the Jersey Lakeland region. Please welcome Ron Marciano to the conversation. Hello, Ron. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm really pleased to have you on. The PCC is really a very recent addition to the Vintage Chevrolet Club, and I'm excited that we're going to have an opportunity to talk about it today. Tell us a little bit about the Personalized Chevrolet chapter.
Well, many members have both original cars and personalized cars. The VCCA recognized that many of its members own both original Chevys and those that contained modifications that met individual tastes. Although customizing vehicles was an important part of automotive history, they didn't fit the charter of the VCCA, which was aimed at factory originals. So as a way to welcome personalized vehicles into the VCCA without offending those that favored the club's mission for factory correct cars and trucks, the VCCA sanctioned the Personalized Chevrolet Chapter, or PCC, in 2014. Unlike a local region, like my region, Jersey Lakeland region, that has monthly meetings, the PCC is non-geographic, with members currently covering 23 states.
So the chapter, as I understand it, could be available to anybody in any of the continental United States, or I guess maybe anywhere in the world, where there was an interest of a local group to come under the VCCA umbrella and become members of the PCC. Is that correct? It is open to any VCCA member anywhere?
That's correct. Anyone is, naturally, it's similar to the notion that the VCCA has that you don't really need a Chevy, but you should have an interest in Chevys or GMCs. And same thing with the PCC. We don't really require that you own a personalized Chevy, but we certainly expect you to have an interest in one.
You mentioned GMC Trucks. Can you talk about why PCC recognizes GMC Trucks? That's relatively new for the club, isn't that right?
PCC tried to kind of leverage off of the rules that the VCCA put in place to open it up to GMC. We felt we would do the same thing.
Tell us a little bit about the differences between the Vintage Chevrolet Club's Chevrolet driver participation class versus the PCC judging process.
Yeah, there is often the confusion between the two classes, and it's funny because I think in some ways the PCC class is closer to VCCA class judging, but I'll explain that a little bit. The Chevrolet driver participation class, which you mentioned, the CDPC, that was introduced into the VCCA for those vehicles that were stock looking but not necessarily restored. It's very expensive to restore a car, and I guess some members wanted a home for their Chevys. Owners are permitted certain era consistent upgrades, like replacing an early small block engine with a more modern small block, like a 350, or adding air conditioning or radial tires. But the vehicle must be visually representative of the original vehicle. I guess if looking across a street at some respectable distance.
Sure.
It cannot contain like custom wheels or bucket seats, for example, if the bucket seats didn't come with the car. So if the vehicle appears mostly stock and is in presentable, not necessarily restored, but presentable condition, it can be certified in the CDPC class. I think I look at the CDPC, the D is driver, and that's sort of the key to me. It's a driver. It could be restored, but generally speaking, the car is expected to be in presentable condition. And certain changes are acceptable because they don't really essentially modify the appearance of the car driving down the street.
And then for the PCC judging process, can you touch on the approach using a point system as opposed to the certification system in CDPC or HPCOF, unrestored cars in the VCCA? Talk about the point system and a little bit about PCC judging.
Right. If you think of the current VCCA class judging, they have a 1,000 point system, and points are deducted based on issues of condition and issues of correctness. So if your outside rear view mirror is round and it should be rectangular, you're going to lose points. Now, the PCC is also a judged class. It's point judged, similar to the class judging. PCC vehicles scoring over 900 condition points receive a junior oval, and those scoring over 950 condition points receive a senior oval. But unlike the VCCA class judging, which is based on condition and correctness, PCC vehicles are scored on condition only. It's sort of the reverse of the being correct. You're looking for modifications. There are currently 3 classes defined within the PCC, depending on the number of the vehicle's modifications. In order to qualify for the contemporary class, the vehicle must contain at least 1 modification in 3 of the 4 areas of the vehicles. Now, if you have a greater number of mods, you can fall into the modified class or the custom class. But acceptable mods are listed on the PCC judging form, and the process since 2014 has evolved considerably, and I have to give credit for the evolution of our judging process, that it has to be shared with our longtime Secretary Treasurer, Gene Rogers,
Yes,
who's from the North Cascade region. And so far, we've had 38 PCC members receiving awards at VCCA meets.
what's really interesting about the PCC is, and you mentioned Gene and others, the breadth of knowledge isn't concentrated in one geographic area. There are members of the VCCA from all over the country, 23 states like you mentioned, but they are providing a perspective to the PCC that really is representative of a wide cross-section of the general VCCA membership. And I think that provides a little bit of strength to the PCC in the vetting process that it used for this judging process. It's quite interesting.
That's true. In fact, sometimes when you're sitting, writing out the requirements, the judging guidelines, and you think you have all the answers, somebody will come back and say, well, why did you do this? Or why don't you do that? And it really opens your mind. You want everybody to participate. You want everybody to substantially agree with what you're doing. So the whole notion of having different classes for different number of mods, that was something that came in later. There was interest bubbling up from the membership about having a class called the sleeper class. And we're trying to define the requirements for that and try that one out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then your 57, tell us about its experience in PCC judging. Have you had it gone through the process?
Yeah, actually, we brought it to the first show, which was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. There it was judged by other members. And I took my senior oval there, which I proudly have on my license plate. And, this may be a reverse advertisement, but I was parked next to a 70 Chevelle.
Oh.
And this Chevelle was gorgeous. It was bone stock, because I had a 70 Chevelle, and I was looking at this. The only thing about the car, it had custom wheels on it. And he was planning on joining the PCC and have a PCC judged. And it was a hard case for me because he really only had custom wheels on it, and it didn't meet the number of modifications you needed for the basic class, contemporary class. And there's a reason why we have a minimum number of modifications, which is illustrated by that experience. This gentleman decided to put his car into VCCA class judging, and he took a first junior. He certainly lost some points because of the wheels, but everything else was perfect on the car. So the reason we're trying to put in a certain minimum number of mods to be eligible, which is a question we get a lot. It's because we want to provide some distancing between existing classes. We don't want to have an overlapping of classes so that you could do class judging and at the same meet you could do PCC judging for your car, or PCC and CDPC. So we try to define the class in such a way that everyone has a home.
How much does it cost to participate in the PCC judging process for a VCCA member?
Well, first of all, only members of the personalized Chevrolet chapter are eligible for PCC judging. I don't want to forget to mention that.
Oh, got it. Yes.
And the judging is held at VCCA area meets and anniversary meets. And the registration forms will provide the opportunity for PCC participation. Now, since we're a separate chapter, our members are responsible for our own PCC judging and for providing PCC awards. These awards, I mentioned earlier about the junior or senior oval. There's also certificates.
Right.
There are pins, and there's a certain cost associated with that. The mailing of these items out. The PCC chapter must recover $15 per vehicle from the hosting region to cover the cost of these awards. This may be covered in a general fee charge for each vehicle, or it may be broken out as a separate charge on the registration form. Every form potentially could be a little bit different.
And that's because the individual VCCA region that is the event host is responsible for the registration function, and the PCC is essentially a show within a show. That function of awards is all managed by the PCC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think saying it's a show within a show is characterizes it pretty well. It becomes a bit of an art form to try to incorporate the PCC judging along with the VCCA classes and their judging or certifications, and to try to do it in a way that's unified and isn't overly confusing to the person who's registering their car.
Now, one of the things that would be good to clarify is you can only be judged in PCC judging if you're a member of the PCC, which would mean you also hold a national VCCA membership. But if you were interested in having your car judged in PCC judging at a area show in any particular area, and they're offering it, can you join the PCC in advance to the show and go ahead and have your car judged?
Yeah, that does happen from time to time. In spite of our best efforts to advertise our existence, somebody can show up at an area meet and say, gee, I was going to have my car judged in CDPC, but it really doesn't qualify. What's this PCC stuff? And
Right. I've seen that happen at a show, and I thought it was kind of cool that they were able to accommodate the member and get his car done. I thought that was neat.
Right. So it's just a matter of saying, okay, you could join, and, we're trying to encourage participation.
And then if a VCCA event organizer wishes to include PCC judging in their event, they can reach out to you. Is that right? How do they accomplish that?
Well, they could email me directly. There's also info@pccvcca.org.
Yep.
And that will come to me. But, my name and phone number and email address is in the GND.
Perfect.
So hopefully the host will get together and we'll go over some of the pricing suggestions so that they could incorporate PCC in the registration forms as seamlessly as possible.
I can tell you that the feedback I've received from events that have hosted PCC judging at their event have all been positive, and they all say how nice it was to work with you and you were very accommodating. So I certainly would encourage anyone who's interested in that, and if believes their membership would avail of this offering, to reach out to you, Ron, and make this a part of their show if they choose.
Great. Thanks so much.
And then how about new members? Are they welcome in the PCC?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd like to see as many members as possible participate. We welcome any and all VCCA members who have an interest in personalized Chevys and GMCs. We issue a newsletter called My Way every other month that contains the updates to our relatively new chapter, upcoming shows, photos of recent PCC award winners, and articles of general interest. I mentioned the sleeper class that we're thinking about, and we're getting feedback. We're putting articles in the newsletter about that, and we encourage people to respond. What do you think? Do you have any ideas about that? So, yeah, our newsletter, I think, is quite informative.
What are the dues to belong to PCC?
The PCC dues are only $12 per calendar year. It goes from January to December. But if you join after June 30th, it's $6 for the balance of the year.
So it's prorated at the back half of the year.
Yes.
And then where can our audience go to learn more about the PCC?
The PCC has its own website. It's pccvcca.org. pccvcca.org. There we have judging guidelines, judging forms. We have a tutorial on PCC judging, a slideshow of recent PCC award winners so people can see what the type of vehicles that we judge. There's membership, applications, sample newsletters, and more. And the website was created and is maintained by our PCC webmaster, Jim Karras. Thank you for that, Jim.
I do several of the VCCA region websites, so I'm happy to do it. Do you have any final comments you want us to know, information you wish to share?
Well, just that I think the newsletter is important, and that people look at it and read it, because that's where we have the area meets where the PCC has been invited. I see a improved interest in it, and the more we judge, the better we get at it. And the more participation we get from our members, the better the chapter will be.
I can tell you that I get the PCC newsletter My Way publication, and it's well done. You do a great job. It's very informative. The graphics are great. It's a beautiful newsletter, so it's certainly worth the $12 a year for that. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Look forward to the next PCC event, and I wish you all well, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jim.
I want to thank Ron Marciano for taking time today to share the information he provided to us about the personalized Chevrolet chapter. It's interesting to note that upon its formation, the PCC had a roster of approximately 38 members. This small group, in a short amount of time, developed a complete judging program for personalized Chevrolets and GMCs that are recognized by many VCCA members as being thoughtful and complementary to the traditional VCCA national judging processes offered to the entire VCCA membership. Thank you for spending this time with us today. We hope you find the VCCA Spotlight informative. Until next time, drive safe, enjoy the ride, and we'll catch you on the back roads.
America is asking you to call. Drive your Chevrolet through the USA. America's the greatest land of all. On a highway or a road along a levee, performance is sweeter. Nothing can beat her. Life is completer in a Chevy. So make a day today to see the